A special agenda is set. Hello, everyone. I'm Brent Goff in Berlin. The U.S. has voted. Barack Obama gets another 4 years. A nail-biter, nerve-wracking election that had every polling place counting carefully to determine who will be the next president of the United States. A race neck and neck as the final polling places on the West Coast closed, and as predicted, it was a razor-edge result with the battleground states of Florida and Ohio once again making the difference. Obama remains commander-in-chief. The Congress remains divided. Some people saying now so much for a brand new start in Washington. Well, I've invited three people today to talk, argue, and pry apart this very important headline of the day. And my guests are all true Trans-Atlanticists. My first guest today is our star European on this special agenda. I'm happy to welcome Kevin Francke. He is with Germany's leading think tank on U.S.-German relations, the U.S. Council on Foreign Relations. Kevin, good to have you on the show this morning. My second guest is Sudha Wilp. She is with the German Marshall Fund of the U.S. She is based here in Berlin. Sudha has extensive experience in working with the U.S. Congress. And Sudha, I believe you used to organize study programs for lawmakers on Capitol Hill and for the German Parliament. So we'll be talking about that in a second. And last but not least, I am happy to welcome back on agenda Charles King Mallory. He's head of the Aspen Institute here in Berlin, one of the top addresses here in Europe where leading minds in politics come together. And Charles, I'll start with you. Are you going to be throwing a party, a victory party later today?
Strangely enough, for the Aspen Institute, it's probably better that Obama gets reelected because we have certain things in the hopper that we have deconflicted with the administration, and so we don't have to start from zero with a new administration. So,
okay, well, that's a positive spin on this, but you coming from a conservative camp, obviously this is not the result that you wanted to see.
No, I'm personally I'm a Republican. Aspen's a nonpartisan institution, so there are a lot of disappointed Republicans out there. However, look at the margin. It's less than 1% in the battleground states. That is a pretty strong statement. You have to try pretty hard as an incumbent president not to get reelected, and he gave it a good shot.
And okay, I mean, it is. It's like I said at the beginning. It's a razor-thin victory. And what does that say, Sudha? I mean, Obama, he had this incredible mandate 4 years ago, and he blew it.
He blew it in one sense.
Well, I mean, he doesn't have that incredible mandate today.
Well, I think the fact that he'll be a second-term president gives him a little bit more leeway, and also he's relaxed to maybe get things done and actually maybe roll up his sleeves and talk to Congress and say, look, I have A, B, and C on my agenda. Let's work together to get it done. So he may not have a mandate with an overwhelming popular vote. The difference, as Charles said, in the battleground states are razor thin.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, I think it was a clear signal in the Electoral College that Obama sweepingly won this election.
Kevin, what do you think? Through the eyes of a German, of a European, this is what the world wanted to see.
I guess Germans were more happy with Obama then. We had polls before that 90 to 95% would have voted for Obama. Only 5 to 10 would have voted for Romney. So I guess for the German population, and I guess you find these numbers overall in Europe, that is, I guess, the turnout the Europeans and the Germans would have loved before as well.
We've been talking throughout this campaign about why the world loves Obama and why in America the people remain so divided. And with this election result, is America just as much a mystery to the rest of the world as it was yesterday?
I guess it's not really a mystery in that way. I have to understand what this country looks like.
But Europeans in particular don't understand why Americans could like someone like Romney.
I guess you have to look at what Europeans think on more the internal policies, if it comes to guns, if it comes to the Second Amendment, that is completely different to Europe. If it comes to social issues, it is completely different in Europe than in the US. And that is points, I guess, that are points that Europeans can hardly understand, like Obama's reform process on healthcare. Thank you. That is something that, especially in Germany, people don't really get why so many Americans were against this policy.
Yeah, and this policy, and Charles, you were telling me earlier that Obama now has the next 4 years to push through his left-wing agenda, as you called it. But, you know, I want to challenge you on that. I mean, how free is he?
Well, I mean, you're unconstrained by the need to run for re-election. So there are certain key electoral blocs who you might otherwise have to be careful about not alienating, who you don't have to really worry about, except, of course, you're going to want to try and set things up well for a potential Democratic successor. So it's only so far you can go, but you can go a lot further in a second term than you can in a first. You know, in foreign policy, Israel is one issue. You're not looking at those key Jewish American votes in Florida, a key swing state. So perhaps you can afford to hang tough a little longer for diplomacy and not succumb to pressure on the military side quite so much.
I want to talk about Israel at one point and foreign policy in just a moment, but I want to talk a little bit more about what this election tells us about the United States, what's going on inside. If anything, when I look at the numbers coming through, I am convinced more than ever that America is a divided country. Explain to our audience, we have an international audience, what does it mean? What's going on in America? Sudha.
I think there is a consensus in America that most people realize that this lack of bipartisanship is not helping the country. So everybody knows about it. Congress, for example, has dismal approval ratings. But nonetheless, we have a system that's sort of been set up now to create gridlock. There's a term called gerrymandering, for example. Every 10 years we have a census in the United States. And unfortunately, when you look at Congress, certain states have been carved out in ways,
the congressional
districts,
right,
so that there are a lot of uncompetitive seats in Congress. And those seats that are maybe competitive, in the primaries, the candidates cater to the base. And so you have a Congress that's deeply divided because people come from opposite ends of the political spectrum. Personally, Brent, I actually am an optimist. I think that Obama in his second term, even though it seems like it's a status quo election, like nothing's changed since yesterday.
I think that's going to be the headline going into Wednesday and Thursday, that it's Obama wins, yay,
right,
more of the same,
right,
boo.
But I think the Republicans, and I'm interested in hearing Charles's perspective, they are also going to have pressure to not just be the party of no, but to also deliver. There's going to be another election, for example, in 2 years, congressional elections.
Exactly. And Charles, I mean, you know, I can imagine the Republicans right now. I mean, we're talking about more than just licking their wounds. This should have been an easy victory for them. No sitting president since Franklin Delano Roosevelt has been reelected with unemployment this high, 8% in the United States, and yet Obama still wins. I mean, inside the Republican National Committee right now, someone's head has to roll.
Well, one thing we Republicans are very good at is making mincemeat of people who aren't winners. So that's going to happen in pretty short order. 6 months ago when I was in Washington, you know, with no disrespect to Governor Romney, what people were in the party were saying was you can't beat something with nothing. So he may have been a very successful businessman, but there were a number of unnecessary, unforced errors in his campaigning. You know, the media...
Wait a minute, though, Charles. Yeah. Listen, let's not blame everything on the campaign here. He was a moderate, if not a liberal Republican when he was a governor, when he was the governor in Massachusetts. You could argue that he could have taken that profile, run on a Republican ticket, and beat Obama. But the Republican Party, because of the Tea Party and the evangelical Christians, forced him to change, to fit that profile. And I think today, aren't we seeing the results of that?
Yeah, and that is in many ways the result of the first 2 years of Obama's term of office. where Rahm Emanuel came in. And the moment Rahm Emanuel was named Chief of Staff, all of us knew, so much for bipartisanship. We saw how he was in the Congress, and we knew that just simply wasn't going to be the case. And they rammed through a health care reform with 0 Republican votes. It mobilized the Tea Party with the consequence that the primaries were fought much further on the right, which meant that the candidate had to go way out there on a limb to prevail in his own party, which made it extremely difficult for him to come back into the center.
But Charles, what do you mean they rammed through health care reform? If we go back 20 years, we had Clinton trying to do that. I mean, this is not an agenda that is new. So we can't say that a president is trying to push it through Congress. I mean, they have known for over 20 years that health care reform is needed, and he was just delivering on his promise to the voters.
Absolutely right. But when you do look at Lyndon Johnson's, for instance, when he introduced his Great Society programs. One of the reasons we still have those programs is he at least took some of the opposition party with him when he passed those programs. When it came to health care reform, there was virtually no Republican votes. So that's what I mean by ramming through. We call it in the Republican Party the knuckle duster politics of Chicago.
Yeah, okay. So what's going to change now?
I very much hope that people will grow up and work together across the aisle. I have to tell you, it's kind of willful suspense of disbelief because what we have is we have a media environment in the United States that makes money out of polarizing the electorate. And we don't have the sort of high levels of party discipline that we have in Europe when it comes to, everyone is an individual actor in the Congress and the Senate. So, I have a feeling, yes, it's going to be more of the same, very unfortunately.
So you're saying that the profile of the Republican Party is no longer within the hands of the Republican Party?
There's no doubt that the Republican Party is going to have to do some very serious introspection after this election. And as I said earlier, we are known for kind of, ruthless bloodletting. They don't like losers. And so my feeling is that the consequences...
Well, if they don't like losers, then why is someone like Karl Rove still a voice to be listened to? I mean, he does not have a proven track record when it comes to occupying the White House after George W. Bush. So why does he still have this voice that gets so much recognition?
He carried 2 elections, That does count for something. And he's managed to raise a lot of money on the back of that. And money talks. And so that's why he's got that voice.
Will demographics speak louder now? I mean, we can't avoid the demographic change that's going on.
Absolutely. I mean, I just want one quick thing, again, maybe a voice of optimism here. I think also the challenges facing the United States right now are so immense. I mean, look, we have this so-called fiscal cliff facing Congress, the president, right away, right? Before Thanksgiving, they're probably going to return to Washington to finish off the rest of the year, the 112th Congress. So I think something like this, almost an outside factor, is going to force them to cut a deal, a grand bargain. So, I mean, I do think there is a chance for reaching across the aisle and coming to some sort of consensus. Because, again, I stress, every member of the House is going to be up for re-election in 2 years. And they don't want to see America go into a recession. They want to see a growth.
And, I mean, we say the Republicans obviously have to do a lot of soul searching. What do the Democrats have to do?
I think the Democrats are having a lot of fun right now and celebrating. I think in the House, Nancy Pelosi is probably going to be thinking about, is she fit to be minority leader? Because, at the beginning of the cycle, they did talk about maybe taking back the House. But the climb of, it was a 25-odd seats was just too far for the Democrats to recover. So, I think the House is going to be an issue where they're going to try to see if, she is going to stay minority leader. We'll see how that all pans out.
Okay.
And she's very well respected, I think, even from both sides of the aisle. They won't say it, but John Boehner likes Nancy Pelosi, I think, too.
Yeah, but I mean, John Boehner also likes, making a sport of blocking anything that the Democrats want right now. I mean, and there's no indication that that's going to change, right?
I think they're going to have to do something. I agree with Sudha there, that there's going to have to be some compromise on the budget because we are really looking at a kind of meltdown scenario.
Well, we're looking at the fiscal cliff, and 47%, in the last poll taken, 47% of Americans say taxes should go up for people making more than $250,000 a year. I mean, that's a clear message. Taxes have to go up. So when are the Republicans going to listen to that? That's clear.
It's a clear message, and you know what? You can go ahead and enact that, and it's not going to make a dime's worth of difference to the big picture because you're not going to raise the revenue you need from that small sliver of the population to balance the budget.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I mean, it'll be interesting to see if the Republicans are going to change their tune now as we go into this new administration. If you are just joining us, I want to let you know this is a special agenda. A special edition of Agenda on the U.S. election. Barack Obama has won another 4 years, and I think I understand from my producer we've got pictures coming in of that. There we go. That is Times Square that you see right there. Americans cheering the news. The vote, the election has been called. Obama will stay commander-in-chief, will remain the U.S. president. This is a big defeat for the Romney-Ryan camp, as you see right there. Not many people celebrating in Boston. All right. So that's where we are. Let me bring in Kevin. We want to kind of turn it. We want to kind of move outside of the United States now and talk about what the world can expect from this second term. What's on your wish list?
Let me start with something else first. We just saw people celebrating there. So I spent the night in Berlin as well, and had been on an event here. And as I said before, people in Germany, they were just happy with this result now. So I guess there are many people in Germany partying as well, having a good time too with this result. What people expect now, I guess, is no big difference then. So we had 4 years of Obama. What we are interested in is to see, okay, where does the U.S. is going for the next 4 years or in the next 4 years? And I guess there will be no big change at all.
But isn't that disappointing, though, especially for Europeans? I remember in 2008, there was all this enthusiasm. It was almost as if Obama is the Messiah coming to save us from the sins of George W. Bush. And that promise that I think people put on him was never fulfilled. I mean, Guantanamo Bay was not closed, for example. A lot of people look at that as a failure. So, I mean, this celebration you're talking about, there's a lot of soberness involved in that too, isn't there?
I guess 4 years back, we started with very high expectations, as you say. Guantanamo should have been closed within 1 year. It didn't happen.
Right.
But then the president pulled the U.S. out of the Iraq. Afghanistan will be coming next. Don't need to mention Osama bin Laden. With Romney, the expectations would have been more or less the same, I could imagine. There would have been no big difference, I guess, in the common U.S. foreign policy.
Okay.
So the big cheering, I guess, comes more from the charismatic leader. I guess Obama is much more liked over here because of his charisma. That is what people like about him.
Yeah, okay. I mean, we're going to see how much mileage we get out of that charisma going into the next 4 years. The U.S. president definitely has a full agenda of challenges competing for his attention. There will be little time for a victory celebration or a second honeymoon in the case of Obama. Let's take a look at the issues topping the list.
The list of issues requiring the president's urgent attention is long. In the U.S., he'll have to tackle employment and the economy, the future of health care, and spiraling education costs that many say are making college too expensive for any but the wealthy. Outside the U.S. borders, the world continues to change at tremendous speed. The hands at the helm in China are changing. Will it seek more partnership or confrontation? And there's another major worry in Asia. George W. Bush called North Korea a rogue state. Will the U.S. be able to bring it into the fold of nations? In the Middle East, the ongoing war in Syria has destabilized the region. And after decades of conflict, the Israelis and Palestinians still seem no closer to a solution. In South America, traditionally a key area in U.S. foreign relations, leaders are going their own way, emerging from the shadow of their powerful neighbor to the north. The new administration will have plenty to keep it busy.
Charles, what do you think is going to be the first thing that Obama's going to have to deal with? I guess, beginning tomorrow. I mean, we really can say, take me through the mind of Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israelis.
Well, when I was in Washington before the election, what I was hearing was that the Israelis were seriously contemplating military action before the election because they were afraid that after the election their leverage would be lost because Obama would not be up for re-election, would not need the important Jewish American votes in key battleground states. So I think things just got a bit more difficult for Mr. Netanyahu. It's been a testy, difficult relationship to start with. We have an election coming up in Israel, so we'll see what comes there. But I do think that it's good that you raised the point, because I think the biggest issue that he has to face straight out of the box is Iran and what to do with Iran, and trying to get negotiations kick-started there. There were hints prior to the election that the U.S. is considering direct bilateral talks of some form with Iran. And the good news is, with Obama re-elected, we don't have to wait for a new administration to kind of find the bathrooms.
Yeah, and isn't that a good thing too? This momentum, if there is one, behind closed doors, in trying to find some type of negotiated solution with Iran. Isn't that momentum now actually, isn't there room for it to strengthen?
Correct. And so,
shouldn't the Israelis be happy about that?
Well, the trick is what they expect coming out of this. So there's a whole school when it comes to Iran who are not going to feel happy until Iran has dismantled its entire nuclear infrastructure and shipped all of its enriched uranium out of the country. Trouble is, that's not the way the NPT works. If you're in observance of your safeguards, you're allowed to enrich. And so if you're an Israeli like Netanyahu, who really, and there are a lot of people in the defense and intelligence establishment in the States who feel this way too, that they're not going to feel safe until everything's been dismantled, you're going to be unhappy with any kind of a negotiated solution, because a negotiated solution is going to allow Iran to enrich in some form on Iranian territory, albeit under very strict safeguards.
Sudha, what do you think? I mean, shouldn't the Israelis, I know that there are not many victory parties in Israel today.
Well, I mean, I think we also have to separate Israel from, the government of Bibi Netanyahu. And, I mean, if we look back, was there really a negligible difference between what President Obama and Governor Romney were proposing vis-a-vis Iran when it came down to the debates? And I think earlier in the campaign, Governor Romney definitely used stronger rhetoric. But when we did come down to the debate on foreign policy, I think the differences were negligible.
Well, I think Romney did say, or Ryan said that they were willing to draw a line in the sand, and they said that Obama was not willing to do that. And
I'm going back to what you said. I mean, I also think we have to look at the whole picture. Even a second term of Obama, when you're saying, well, he doesn't have to cater to necessarily to a Jewish vote, I mean, he has a Congress that will also put pressure on him to take action. Israel has steadfast friends in the U.S. Congress. So regardless of what maybe President Obama is thinking, and frankly, I don't think that's necessarily true, Congress will not allow him to just take a back seat.
You spent years also working with members of Congress. Is the pressure from Israel, is it as great on Congress as people talk about it being?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think, the U.S. Congress has special relationships with parliamentarians in many parts of this world, or at governments even, but Israel is a very close friend, as is Great Britain, as is Germany, for example. But yes, it's true. I mean, and it's not just, the traditional lobby groups like AIPAC, there's also J Street. There's definitely a plethora of organizations that lobby Congress on these issues.
Just quickly.
Yeah, I think that, the issue is going to be whether they repeat the mistake with North Korea and try to do an executive agreement as opposed to a treaty. If they do a treaty, then you have it confirmed by the Senate, in which case it becomes a more manageable problem.
Right. Kevin, what's your take on this? What's Germany's take on the Israeli-Iran situation? What do they think they're going to see from Obama?
I think he might just continue what he did before. So I guess for the Germans it might be right that Obama was reelected. Of course, it was rhetoric in the time up to the election from Romney's side, because he had to position himself as the man who would do another policy, maybe to differentiate from Obama. But I guess that was rhetoric then. I think we might see in the next 4 years something that President Bush did as well in the second term, and that is that he was more open to foreign policy because he was not that restricted to domestic policies anymore. But it was Bush as well, so the later Bush, who took up the Israeli-Palestinian issue only in the second term. And so maybe that could be something for Obama as well, to do more in the second term, not on this issue.
Well, yeah, I mean, couldn't he be trying to, he now has room to work on his legacy, and maybe he's thinking, or he'll do something like, he'll do what Jimmy Carter maybe could have done in a second term, and finally will find a solution to peace between Israelis and the Palestinians.
Of course, that would be great. It might be too early to say that he might find a peace there, but at least what he should do, and that is, I guess, what we could expect, to do more at least on that. I guess so far he has not been to Israel, so far as I know. He might do that in the second term. Another point I'd like to draw the attention to is Afghanistan. Like you said before, it might be good that we don't have a change now. So if we look at Afghanistan, that is for Germany a very important topic. We'll have a new mandate from the Bundestag in January coming up. And after that, we might have a new mandate after ISAF. So we don't need time that much. We don't need to wait until the new administration might be in office, but we can work on it.
But he's going to have to deal with the realities of the troops pulling out 2014, and we're going to see with Obama as president what happens to Afghanistan without Western troops there.
Also remember, Mrs. Clinton has already lame ducked herself and said she's not up for a new term as Sec State. So we're going to have a transition at the helm of our foreign policy. So that is going to be interesting to see how that is managed and whether they manage a smooth transition there or not in order to maintain this momentum that Sudha was referring to.
I want to stay with the Middle East for a second. What about Syria? A lot of people have said that when it comes to a crisis like Syria, Obama will only do something if he has company. Is he going to get company? Now, is he going to have some type of alliance to go in with the United States to intervene, or is intervention completely out of the question? What do you think, Sudha?
I think during the campaign, intervention was out of the question. I mean, it's a very fluid situation, and I think as we see and hear more reports of human rights abuses and how, women and children are dying each day, things could change. And don't forget, the United States is also a very strong ally of Turkey, a neighbor of Syria, and I do believe that President Obama and Prime Minister Erdogan have a very close relationship. So maybe there will be a change now that Obama has been reelected in terms of playing a more active role in that conflict zone. But clearly, during the campaign, that wasn't an option.
My feeling is, though, despite the fact that he has a second term, Obama is still not going to be willing to go into any ventures that require military action right now. I
mean, perhaps we can see some sort of Libya model where, it's, I don't want to use the term leading from behind, but something to that nature where he builds a coalition and the U.S. doesn't necessarily take the brunt.
So the coalition may be coming from Europe.
I don't see Europe and especially Germany going into Syria soon. It's I like the term leading from behind because that would mean that the Europeans need to do more and the Germans need to do more. I guess that is what Americans expect from us over here. And
so that's not going to happen, is it?
I don't say that it's not going to happen. I just say it's not going to happen until tomorrow morning. It's something we need to work on. What we especially need to do is to figure out what is the situation in Syria and what could happen and what would be the result of an intervention or whatever. We need to think, we need to remind ourselves that Syria's neighbor is Iran. Like we covered this topic before. Yeah. Do we want to have something going on there? Do we want to set the whole region on fire? Or can we do it with another approach, like what we did with Iran with the sanctions? Could be a diplomatic approach, still be feasible, still Lakhdar Brahimi is still working on Syria.
He's still working,
we should still give him a chance on that, and I guess that is something that Obama should still do.
Okay, what about China? We're talking about the U.S. election, There is an election, if you want to call it that is taking place this week. A selection is a better term. You need to put that big S in front of the word. In Beijing this week, the Communist Party is convening. Leadership is changing. What can Obama expect from that? I mean, is he going to have to make any big decisions in the next 4 years? We know, since Romney did not win, that we're not going to label China a currency manipulator. Charles, what do you say?
Well, I think that the biggest problem the incoming second administration will face is a continuance of Chinese assertiveness in the South China Sea in territorial disputes such as the Paracels and others. In Japan, we have an ongoing confrontation. Funnily enough, I think that actually that can redound to the U.S.'s benefit, because I think the Chinese have overplayed their hand, and we'll find ourselves being invited back into places we were kicked out of, like the Philippines. So I see...
What do you mean the Chinese have overplayed their hand?
Well, they've become very assertive, and they have gotten their neighbors quite worried.
But don't they have the muscle, at this point, don't they have the muscle to back up that assertiveness?
No. They've only got a brown water navy. They don't have a blue water navy. The brown water navy is a coastal navy. They've got one aircraft carrier. They don't have the mojo to really prevail. And so, but what they're doing is they're scaring their neighbors, and their neighbors are looking to the United States. And so we will have an opportunity to position ourselves there, to retain access to the West Pacific, and maybe at some point remind the Chinese who it was who liberated the West Pacific.
Sudha?
Well, maybe just to change the gears on China, I mean, we can also look at the business and trade relationship with China. I think one of the challenges for President Obama and U.S. business in general is also to deal with piracy issues, intellectual property. I think that's going to be sort of a challenge. How do we work together to increase trade that's mutually beneficial, but at the same time protect the United States' intellectual property? That I think will be a big, it already is a big agenda item.
Yeah, it is a big agenda. It's a big agenda for the Europeans too.
I think what we have there with China and American relations is happy enough. It's just and only an economic conflict, economic issue. So that can be solved by talks, and I guess that is what is needed there. The Americans and the Chinese should just sit together and talk over these points they have down there. Yeah. And the Europeans, they could help with that. They could moderate it if they asked to. But of course, they have an interest in the sea lines of communications to be that open, so that free trade can be done down there.
Okay. All right. If you are joining us right now, this is a special edition of Agenda. The U.S. has voted. Barack Obama has been reelected as president of the United States, and we're dedicating this edition of Agenda to talk about the challenges and the hopes of a second Obama administration. The numbers coming in for the congressional election as well. And if you look at the numbers, it looks like more of the same. A lot of analysts and observers saying Obama does not go into his second term with a strong mandate. And when you look at Congress, it looks like gridlock will be on the agenda beginning tomorrow. Let me ask our panel here, what about that monster storm Sandy? Did Sandy help to put the environment back on the agenda in U.S. politics? Did that happen, or was it just a storm that's already forgotten? Sudha?
I think that climate change was definitely then brought to the minds of Americans, but I don't think it's not necessarily going to be put on the legislative agenda. Let's put it that way. Maybe there will be things we can do in the United States to make us more energy independent, but in terms of natural gas, et cetera. But the sort of climate change legislation that I think our friends in Europe are looking for will be hard to find, I think, in the next Obama term.
It could be a no-brainer for the Democrats to take it and run with it, but they're not doing that. So, Charles, since we're talking about a rebirth that is necessary for the Republicans, why don't the Republicans bathe themselves in green?
I think that would be a smart strategy. I think short term, what Americans are worried about is the economy. And so they're going to be reluctant until the economy is sort of firing again on all cylinders to impose additional costs. However, people are increasingly realizing that we're at a competitive disadvantage with the Europeans when it comes to environmental technologies. And so I think the business community is going to be playing catch-up, and I think there'll be receptiveness to this. And we just have to, part of a Republican rethink coming out of this election will be, how do you position yourself on issues like these? How do you appeal to the Hispanic population in the United States? It's, we've known for a long, long time we've got to do that. As a party, we got a problem with immigration reform. President Bush doesn't get a hell of a lot of credit for giving it a good shot, and he was, shot down by his own party.
Yeah, but let me just stick with the environment for a second. Why can't the Republicans look at what's going on in Europe, for example, and see the potential in that and grab onto it? We know that big oil and the Republicans are in bed together. No one makes a secret of that. But why can't you say there's room in this bed for big green industry as well?
Well, I think what you're seeing is in U.S. industry, for instance, people are going out for bragging rights about who has a platinum LEED certified building that is environmentally friendly. So industry is in many ways out ahead of politics in this. Definitely, the Republicans need a positive message on the environment. I think what is slowing things down in the short term is looking for policy options that don't impose short-term punitive costs that would decelerate a recovery.
Kevin?
I guess the Americans will jump on the train soon as well. It's something.
Do you really?
I think so. It is a future technology, and
come on. Yeah, you sound like a Green Party member from 1985.
No, I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic. The Americans will see that is something they should invest in as well in the future. They can't avoid it. Of course, you have to see that in the U.S. they have much more oil reserves down there than the Europeans, especially the Germans have. Of course, Germany has to invest in that, and that is the only thing we have. So if we would like to get us independent from oil and gas from other countries, we need to do something else. We need to change the whole structure. The U.S. doesn't need to do that from today until tomorrow, but I'm pretty sure they will soon come to that as well.
I think that from a business aspect, the Germans love to preach to the Americans that the Americans need to be greener. But if the Americans were to throw their full weight and energy into green industry, they would be huge rivals to the Germans, particularly when it comes to solar energy. And we see that the Germans don't like the fact that the Chinese now make solar panels at about 1/10 of what it costs to make them here.
Well, Brent, I guess from a personal point of view, it would be great if the Americans would do so. Of course, on the economic terms, it might be that German industries would maybe lose their lead in that, but it's not, I guess the topic is not that much about jobs in industry, but if it comes to this green policies, it's more than as well. We are on this planet together, and so we need to work on that. And I guess that might not be the driving factor, but whatever. If it's for the Americans, the industry that drives them. So come on, let's talk about that. Let's do that.
Yeah,
sure. Well, I think the problem in the Republican Party is the sort of the statist approach that you have in Germany. And what we want to do is develop policies that incentivize industry to come up with solutions of their own. The problem we have as a party is we reject strong statist intervention to achieve these goals, whether it be subsidizing windmills, whether it be subsidizing solar.
Yeah, but come on, that argument we can take back 50 years, and it doesn't hold water anymore. There is a role for the state. Why can't the Republicans embrace the fact that the state has a role as maybe to help incubate new industries? What's wrong with that?
Just to help Charles out a little bit. I think the Republicans do believe in that, but maybe on the state level rather than the federal level. And that's where we diverge from Germany with this feed-in tariff. It would be, I think, very hard, for example, to set up a model like a feed-in tariff on a federal level in the United States. And there are states in the U.S. that are taking initiatives in green technologies. So, we shouldn't be so pessimistic. I think that climate change legislation is different from creating innovation and R&D in green technologies.
Republicans just find it very difficult to defend situations where you choose winners and you end up choosing the wrong winner, and you end up blowing $500 million on a company like Solyndra.
The Republicans spent $90 million more than the Democrats on this election on a loser, Charles. So,
but it wasn't a company. It wasn't intervention in the economy. We don't believe in picking winners or losers in the economy.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm just saying the Republicans have a pretty good record of picking losers right now. We're running out of time. We have about 2 minutes left. Let's talk about the legacy of President Obama. He does have 4 more years. What will we be talking about in 2016? Charles?
Well, I think he has an opportunity now to try and deliver on what he promised and before his first term, namely hope in the economic sphere, namely working across the aisle. So I would hope and expect to see him work in that direction. The same would go for things like the peace process, Iran. He has an opportunity there to deliver with the Iranians, and he also has an opportunity, I think, or he needs to rebuild his relationship with the Israeli government.
All right, Kevin, briefly.
In the first term, he wanted to do some things, and he didn't make it. Now he got the chance again to do it again, and so I guess this time he will make it. I agree with you that
the window of opportunity is open.
At the end, his high expectation might be met at the end.
And Sudha?
I agree. I mean, with both my colleagues here, I think, and we shouldn't forget, first, African-American president in the United States. That will certainly be the #1 thing in his legacy, for his presidential legacy.
Okay. 2016, who's going to be the Democrat candidate for the White House? Is it going to be Hillary Clinton? Charles, come on, we're running out of time. Who do you think?
I think she certainly will give it thought. Of course, my first thoughts go to Republican candidates.
Yeah, all right. Kevin, Sudha, what do you think? Hillary in 2016?
It'll be Hillary Clinton or Governor Cuomo.
Okay. All right, you heard it here. Check back in with us 4 years from now to see if our distinguished panel was right about that. That is going to round out this special edition on the U.S. election. Don't forget that you can watch the show again online, and remember, our inbox is always open for you. I'm Brent Goff in Berlin. Thanks for stopping by, and join me next time when I set the agenda.